respect to transportation planning. I'm going to share my screen. Yeah, please confirm if it's visible.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Uh, if I understood correctly, this is basically a faculty development program. So apart from students, as conveyed by Professor Mehta, there are many faculty as well. I congratulate the organizing team for having this organized. And for all the delegates, I understand it's a difficult period because of it's a post lunch time and having already I think 10 or 12 sessions already completed as a part of this program, and still you are keen to listen me. I'm happy for that. The thing, I'm basically a planner and I belong to Gujarat. I studied in LD and I belong to Bhavnagar. So I have learned two things in a broad way. One is like traffic engineering, and second is the transportation planning. And currently at CRRI, we do work in all aspects related to the sustainable transportation planning and the road safety as well. Uh, most of us being in faculty also, we do teach or we do are in connected with the two broad topic, that is traffic engineering and transport planning. Of course they are interlinked and very much dependent on each other. I think we being a faculty, it becomes more important to understand what is the difference between these two. When we say traffic engineering, we are talking about more of roads, the vehicles, how they move, geometry, and how it can be made safe, etc. When we are talking about transport planning, we are talking at a larger zone, maybe at a city level, maybe an area level. What kind of planning should we do so that overall we move towards the sustainability, we move towards a safer commuting of people, persons, rather than the vehicles. I will start with a very broad introduction with respect to these, or broad understanding what most of us we do have with us. This is a typical picture. It's basically nothing special to be observed here. It conveys the traffic jam, the congestion. This is quite common in any road of Surat, most of the roads on Surat, Ahmedabad, Baroda, Delhi. I mean, almost all metro cities or all larger cities in India. This is a basically traffic jam. And whenever, as a human being in this profession, whenever we see this kind of situation, what comes to our mind? Things comes to our mind, most of us, is basically we don't have enough space to accommodate these many vehicles. And that's why this is the traffic jam. This is the congestion level of congestion we are having. Western countries, or so-called, I will say, developed countries, to manage this, to dissolve this congestion, they have provided additional space, because we believe that we don't have space and that's why we are having congestion. So they also believed that way earlier, and they started constructing all these, I will say, complex looking or a challenge looking infrastructure, sometimes in terms of flyovers, sometimes in form of expressway, access control roads, and clover leaf, and so on. This looks attractive as a, if I am a civil engineer, if I am a structural engineer, this is a challenge, of course. But from the perspective of transportation planning, even by adding this much space, they have not resolved the problem. Still, these countries are having jams, traffic jams, the congestion, and kind of pollution. What we have it here, they are also having similar problems. So definitely, space is not the constraint. So let's see some other angle. What, this is again Indian picture, road, a picture for any Indian typical road. Sometimes we believe that this this is the problem, since we don't have a lane discipline. That's why we are facing all this congestion and problems attached to it with respect to accidents and so on, since we in India we don't have a lane discipline. I will say in Western countries, or again in the developed countries, they follow the lane discipline so nicely. This is a very typical picture again of any developed countries. The previous picture may look a bit unorganized, and this may look more of organized, but just try to understand both are congestion. One may look better in terms of picture, but both are same. Both are basically representing the level of congestion we are having on our roads. So definitely lane discipline is not the solution. So sometimes we believe that the way we, being in India, the way we park our cars or park our any kind of vehicles here and there, that is the problem. This is the main reason of, say, all negative part of the transportation, that is congestion, safety aspects, pollution and everything. But then again, if we compare it with the Western countries or developed countries, if you are able to see this, it's not very clear, but basically this each pixel is a parked car. They have spent huge space for parking their cars. Wherever it is possible, they have provided in form of at the grade, at the ground level parking. Wherever it was not possible to provide at grade parking, they built up these large high-rised buildings for just for car parkings. If you see carefully, the lower part is basically car parking. The part which is having a larger diameter comparatively, it is basically all car parking. So they provided huge car parking. Still, they are having the same problem. What does it convey? It conveys the problem is not with the space, neither it with respect to the lane discipline, nor it's with respect to some parking, etc. The way we park. The problem is the area itself. Area, it means a single person. This is a picture of this Professor Herman Knopflicker. He's from Vienna University. What he's trying to convey here is the problem lies with the space we consume on roads. Being in a car. If we are moving in a car, how much space do we consume when we are moving on road? Now, just imagine if each and every person start using a space equivalent to a car. Suppose I am walking and I start consuming space equivalent to a car. Do you think we have for every person here? In Delhi or in India or anywhere, wherever we are, whichever city we do think of, just imagine how many people are using car as of now. When we look at road, we may see too many cars here and there, and we start believing that almost everyone is having car. But just try to consider it. One thing, just check out the data. Of course, being in this field, being in a research, we do believe a lot on data. Just check out the data, and half of the households do not own any vehicle. When I say any vehicle, means they don't even own a two-wheeler. So half of them are owning, say, car. Now, even in any household, and household means any family, owning a car, suppose, and typically in our families, we do have 4 to 5 people. Now, out of these 4 or to 5, only one person usually is using that particular car, maybe for his office purpose, job purpose, work purpose, anything. But remaining 4 must be using some other modes. What are those modes? If some students are there, they may be using bicycle, they may be going by bus, they may be using, in case of Delhi, it's a metro. In case of some elderly people are there, they usually go into a nearby area and they usually go by walk or some other easy to handle auto kind of vehicles. At the same time, some housewives, they also do buy many things from the nearby area, and they may be going by two-wheeler or walk also. So we need to understand, if everyone start consuming this much space, what will happen? In that case, we will not be having any space for spending anything else. As of now, if I talk about Delhi, nearly 1/3 area of Delhi, it's a huge 1/3 area of the total Delhi is basically utilized for vehicles. And when I say vehicles, it includes both roads as well as the parking. So if I keep adding more and more space, it may happen that since we keep saying the number of cars are increasing every day, so we need to widen up our roads. Now, if we keep widening our roads, what is the limit that beyond that we cannot widen it up? How much space would we like to give for just for roads? So if we are keep adding, basically we are accommodating more and more vehicles, and it will cost a lot. We may have to reduce the space from our public spaces, that is parks, uh, all public spaces, parks, institutes, religious places, and maybe it may go up to even encroaching our houses. We may have to start building a smaller houses. So we need to understand what can be the critical limit for allowing the space to vehicles. So what could be the sustainable solution? As of now, why everyone is willing to have a car? Because it is the most comfortable comfortable way of commuting from a place to another place. But of course, everyone has to move, and they will keep moving. We will keep moving. So what can be the sustainable solution which do not require that much space? So we all understand that it is public transportation and non-motorized transportation, because of the simple reason, in terms of space, they consume less. This is a typical picture you might have seen earlier in many lectures, even mine or anyone else, because we, being a planner, we use this picture a lot, just to convey that if 60 people have to move by a car or by a bus, or if they start moving by bicycle, or say even walking, how much space is required. So if you see the picture of the A, which are basically having all cars, how much space is required? If same number of people are start moving by bus, how much space is required? It's quite less. So that's why this is considered to be sustainable mode, because it requires less space. At the same time, it improves the congestion level drastically, and at the same time, it becomes more safe. And third, but not at all a least important, in fact it is the most important, being in Delhi, I can say, that is the pollution. A person 60% moving by car, the level of pollution they generate, and it cannot be even compared with the same 60 people when they move from by a bus. It generates almost nothing comparatively. So basically these sustainable modes are the solution. We all know, in fact, being in this field, being in especially the academics, we have taught almost everyone, every student, you might have told them that this is the solution. But when it comes from for the implementation part, in terms of projects or something, everyone would like to have data. Because as of now, if today you say that everyone, I mean, we understand that everyone should have a good cycle track, a good footpath, then if you are involved in some projects and you are trying to convince the decision maker that we need a good footpath, we need budget for a cycle track, everyone will look for a data. Because most of even decision makers, what they see on roads, they see most of the cars, because that is basically the most of the space is consumed by cars. So what is visible to everyone is the car. So if you look at the data, I mean, this is true for almost every city of India. On an average, for any city, 28% of people are basically walking to their, respective places. Maybe it can be their offices are nearby. Some students are walking to the school by walk, and so on. There are so many trips made by so many elderly people and housekeeping people. They do walk, but we haven't considered them. We, unfortunately, we most of the time think of peak hours. And in peak hours, when we talk about the peak hours, again, we focus on the people who are going to work. We have totally ignored the people who are not going to work and still they commute. And that's a huge number. So this is just a summary of all Indian cities. Nearly 28% they do walk, nearly 11% they do cycle, and rest remaining are using two-wheelers, cars, and public transportation. Here again, public transportation is also huge, 27%. So we need to think it may look like most of the people are using car, but if you look at the detailed data, it will tell you that just keep car aside and provide facilities to remaining all people because they are in the majority. When we see where are the cycles, I mean, so many people may say, "Arey, cycle to आजकल कोई चलाता ही नहीं है," or who actually walks. Just try to look at the same road once again. Apart from car, you will see so many non-motorized transport. Neither they are creating any pollution, neither they can have a major accidents. If there are two cars and they hit each other, the chances that someone may die is quite high compared to if two cycles are hitting each other by mistake. They may fall down, they may get injured, but I mean, it would not be a fatal accident. So definitely they are helping almost everywhere, improving safety, improving the pollution level. But on road, if you see, you may not be able to observe them much. Why? Because the majority space has been consumed by cars and we are not used to see them. If I talk about, I have more data with respect to Delhi. So if I talk about Delhi, as on today, I mean, just pre-COVID situation, 90 lakh walking trips have been made in Delhi. 11 lakh cycle trips have been made in Delhi. And in Delhi, we have a cycle rickshaw. Again, it's a non-motorized transport. So nearly 17 lakh trips have been made by these. Now, if you combine all three together and compare with the all other modes, that is motorized mode, that is car, two-wheeler, even bus and metro, that this is the 50% share of the total trips. And what remains in news or what remains in even the mind of each and every planner or each and every engineer or each and every person involved in the decision making, PWD, MCD, everywhere, that is the car. When we see where these sustainable modes are in on road, most of them, I mean, not in Delhi itself, but almost every city in India, if you look at the cyclist, or if you look at the four-wheeled cycle lorry, we call it a four-wheeler, that is a sustainable mode again. So if you look at road and try to see where they are moving, you will hardly find them moving in a very comfortable way. They are almost like pushed towards not so clean area, not so good surface area, sometimes the leftmost corner, which is quite unhealthy in all sense. And this is not a typical one particular road or one particular stretch, which what I'm talking about. This is common for almost every city in India. So in terms of facilities, maybe we should provide them a good facility, whoever is a sustainable mode in terms of walking or cycling. We need to provide good facility. But when we do not provide, what happens? Whoever is walking today or whoever is using, say, bus today, why are they using? Not because they believe it's a sustainable mode and I should be using it. Of course not. They are using those modes only because of one constraint, and that is the financial constraint. Whoever is using bus today, they have a car in their mind. They would like to purchase a two-wheeler if their income becomes better, and later on if it becomes even more better, then they would like to go for purchasing a car. So whoever is using a kind of a sustainable modes, either walking, cycling, or using bus, most of them are using by compulsion and not by choice. Because as of now, the facilities are not in support of these modes. They are walking, but with all this danger in their mind. They feel unsafe. They know it is unsafe, but still they have to use it because they cannot afford to have a two-wheeler or car. So as soon as their income will improve, definitely, so they would like to go towards the motorized mode. If we just try to understand what kind of facilities we are giving them as a planner, as an engineer, and wherever we are, whatever design we are trying to make. To remove the congestion or to reduce the congestion, what do? We build foot-over bridges so that more and more these cars can move easily. Now, when we provide foot-over bridge, what does it mean? That all pedestrians should go and cross there? But in any cities, if you look at these foot-over bridges, most of them are vacant. they are not being used by pedestrians, what does it mean? We start blaming that यहाँ पे लोग ऊपर से जाते ही नहीं है, बना के दिया है फिर भी they don't go there. Just try to imagine yourself, or I should imagine myself being there, and now I have to cross the road. What is the easiest way? And what is the most convenient way? Yes? The most convenient way is to walk just on road. Now imagine if there is a signal and if it turns green for me, for pedestrians, and I have to cross, that is the most easiest way. And everyone is trying for that best way. If I have to go on the foot-over bridge and I have to cross the road, maybe I will need 6 times more energy in terms of energy as well as the time. So I will say whoever is basically violating the rule and not going by foot-over bridge, they are smart enough. They know which one is the best option. But being a planner or being engineer or designer, we have done something wrong here. This is actually the starting point, or whatever you call end point of the flyover. In any city, wherever you are, just try to see whenever, if you are traveling by car and you come down from the flyover, at the end of flyover, at the edges, both the edges of flyover, ends of the flyover, you will see some people crossing. And we always say ki, no, it's their fault. They should not have crossed it here. But that indicates something, some common observation everywhere throughout the world, I mean throughout the India. What it is, at both the ends of the flyover bridge, flyover, there are some pedestrians, means they would like to cross it there, they would like to have some crossing facilities over there, but we don't have it, and that's why they have to break the rule. So while breaking these rules or violating these rules, they takes unsafe behavior. They will keep walking, though they don't have any clear green time for their walk. So they jump in between. Obviously, it is a conflict. It creates a conflict between pedestrians and motorized vehicles, making it very unsafe. So we need to understand for each and every infrastructure whom it is giving some benefit and whom it is giving some additional effort or unsafe behavior. Of course, when we provide a foot-over bridge, we expect that cars will be able to move faster. But is it our priority? What is our priority? Yeah, if you remove this foot-over bridge from this place and provide a signalized intersection, definitely there would be some delay for each and every person traveling by car. It can be, red signal can be 30 seconds, 40, 50 seconds, maybe maximum 1 minute. So is it our priority to save the 1 minute of a car user, or which is unsustainable mode, or our priority lies with the pedestrian or whoever is the non-motorized transport user to provide them a very safe and convenient crossing? So choice is very clear. So if it's your priority is very clear, definitely you can make a right choice. When we are unable to provide these kind of situation, the clear way, clear, comfortable crossing facilities, these kind of violations do happen. They do jump over the fencing, or sometimes, or most of the time, you might have seen even the broken fencing on many roads, wherever it's possible, they do break it. When they do break it, some people may say कि यहाँ कुछ भी रखो तोड़ देते हैं. But it is basically their voice, the voice of a pedestrian or all people who are moving there, that we needed some intersection here, we need some crossing facility here. That's the kind of, I will say, level of frustration they are showing by breaking it, so that still we are ignoring and we are considering them as a violator. But they need to put so much effort even while crossing, even if they have to jump through the wall or median or even the fencing, whatever, and still they are avoiding the foot-over bridge. I'm giving example. It can be foot-over bridge, it can be a flyover, it can be access control road, anything and everything. Each and every infrastructure needs to be checked that is it really in favor of sustainable modes or not. Because in theory we kept learning that which are the sustainable modes. But solution, when we try to implement, somehow we all become kind of a focus for cars only. We all have car in our mind and we start giving all kind of solution which is convenient for car, and we simply maybe we are missing providing facility to almost everything else. Another infrastructure is the footpath. Just imagine at on any road when pedestrians do walk on footpath. We have done some study and we have observed there are only two reasons when a pedestrian walk on footpath. The first reason is very obvious. If footpath is too good, it's a so nicely clean and decorated kind of a very plantation and all, definitely everyone would like to walk over there. Most of us, whenever we go for some places, it's a tourism places, we do observe this kind of walking, right? Second is, if footpath is very dirty, very ugly, all kind of dustbins and everything is there, which is very common unfortunately, but still people are walking, then in that case just try to see the reason. the, the main road where the vehicles are moving, that must be heavily congested, so congested that the pedestrian can't even think of walking there. And that's why, irrespective of the surface of the quality of footpath, they will go on footpath and try to walk there because they are unable to walk on road where pedestrians are, where the vehicles are moving. And these are the common reasons when they don't walk on footpath. I mean, this is nothing special to be observed. I mean, nothing particularly for this particular location. It is very common and we can see almost everywhere around our city or around our area, wherever we are. Either footpaths are encouraged by many vehicles, cars, sometimes we can hawkers. Otherwise, it's so ugly, we can't even think of walking there. Now, in such situation, what happens? When a pedestrian is not walking on footpath and walking on road, basically we, as even if we think for cars, just imagine, we are reducing the capacity of roads. The capacity of road is definitely directly relevant to the width of road available for vehicles to move. Now, if pedestrians start moving on road instead of footpath, definitely we are reducing the capacity as well as the level of service for vehicles. Now, then what is the solution? What should we do? There is only one solution. Okay, just 1 second. I will skip this. There is only one solution. For each and every road which is having a footpath, the quality of footpath must be good. Must be good so that every person do walk on footpath and do not reduce the capacity of roads. And when I say the footpath must be good, what I mean is if someone has to walk, as of now, if you go to any road which is having a footpath, the quality of the road surface is much more better than the quality of footpath. It is true for almost 90% of the road in India. So if I have two options to choose while I walk, one is footpath, which surface is not so clean or not so good, and another is a road where the most of the time the quality of road is obviously better than the footpath. I will choose a better one. So I will choose the road. So unless we have the footpath quality better than the road for walking, everyone is smart enough and they will choose to walk on road, which will reduce the capacity of road one. And apart from that, when pedestrians are walking on road, basically it is kind of a interaction between vehicle and pedestrian, creating conflicts, creating more chances, higher chances for accidents to have. So if we want to improve the safety as well as the capacity of roads, we need to provide better footpaths. Now, whenever we talk about providing footpath or providing roads, as a traffic engineering, I mean, wherever we have studied, what we have understood is a road which allows the driver to drive at a very high speed. That is basically highest speed is the basically level of service A. If you go little down, maybe level of service B, C, and so on. So we have these curves in our textbooks. The higher speed is considered to be the better. that is considered to be A from the traffic engineering perspective. But from the traffic safety perspective, what is our priority? From traffic safety perspective, the lower the speed, the safer we are. This is very common and very well proved thing. We all know that. If I'm driving, I'm moving at a very fast speed. If I hit even a stone, the chances of, fatal accident is high compared to if I'm moving at a speed of 10 kilometer per hour. So this is to be totally, opposite to the traffic engineering. And that's why it becomes very important to balance these two. If we have to balance these two, we need to separate them out. We need to provide good footpaths so that the capacity is okay and safety is also okay. So this is what balance is required, instead of giving priority to only the traffic engineering part, only to the level of service part of the vehicles. And this can be done very easily. This can be basically done by segregation of these all. If we have, apart from say footpath, if we have cycles, we have other non-motorized vehicles like cycle rickshaw in case of Delhi, we need to basically provide a separate space for them. This is the very clear, easy idea of to maintain the balance between the engineering and the safety part. Now, after looking at these kind of slides, so many people may raise a question that Delhi has a wide roads, but not every city has. So providing a footpath and then cycle track, it's a luxury for the roads which are having this much space, and not for each and every road. We all, yes. So whenever we need to provide this much space, we should be, if we don't have space, we need to know what is our priority. When we start designing a road from leftmost side, usually what we do is, okay, there is a one car lane and the second, say, overtaking zone, overtaking lane, and then we don't have enough space, so we are not able to provide a cycle track, or we are not able to provide a footpath. But if you have a limited space, make sure that you start your designing from the edges. Provide footpath, provide maybe cycle track, and one car lane, or maybe you can say, okay, we don't have space, so we are not able to provide car lane. No need to sacrifice the facility for sustainable modes to give priority to cars. That's what this I would like to convey. I think most of us would be aware of the concept of BRT, that is bus rapid transport. Now imagine this is a bus rapid transport, is basically where the bus has a clear lane for movement. Now being a user, if you are in a car, because you may be able to see the congestion in this particular slide. Now if you are a user, you are somewhere in this car, what will come to your mind? It will come it may come that I am stuck in a traffic jam, but bus is able to move faster. So if it's your daily route, or the whole route, if your car is in the congestion and the bus is able to move faster, what comes to your mind? After an observation of a couple of days, you will start using bus, because that is easier, that is faster. So that's what BRT concept says. It's okay to have traffic jam for cars, but let bus move faster, so the behavior starts changing. The behavior in terms of the mode we choose to commute from any place to another place, A to B. But if what happens in our, as of now, the roads without BRT, where car is moving at a quite higher speed compared to the bus. In that case, obviously, whoever is using bus and moving from A to B would like to have a car so that he can also go faster. So we need to understand what is our priority. If our priority is also, like, say, sustainable modes, that is bus. When we say bus is a sustainable mode, we need to make it more and more user friendly. Whoever is traveling by bus if they all start using car, it become a chaos for us. As we discussed earlier, it will be, we will not be having any space for our houses. So a bus stop needs to be like a facility provider rather than a just one kind of a board where we is written that this is a bus stop and XYZ routes to come here. Let the bus user makes more and more comfortable. Let have some space for dustbins. Let's have some space for their sitting. Let's have some space for even the hawkers. In most of our cities around bus stop, we may see someone is selling the chai, someone is selling the chips and chocolates, someone is selling the newspaper and water and those things. And but we, when we come to these kind of situation, being a traffic engineer, we remove all these things and we design a bus stop high, I mean, nice looking structure. But we forget that these are the needs for the whoever was coming to bus. If I am a bus user, I would like to have a cup of tea, I would like to have a glass of water, I would like to have purchase a say newspaper. So by design itself, we need to include the space for these kind of facilities which a bus user is requiring for. So I think we need to be very clear what we would like to have. And once we are clear, once our priority is clear, then we would be able to design everything for our priority for sustainable modes. Only thing, being a traffic engineer or planner, we just need to remove the car from our mind so that we can design things for all other sustainable modes. And when we decide to move towards sustainable uh, modes, sometimes we don't know what kind of methods to be chosen, because method is quite important. Typically, what do? We do believe that if I have to know at one particular place what is the traffic, I will ask my student or I will ask someone to collect data for peak hours. Usually we do collect data for peak hours because it's not practically possible or affordable to collect data for all 24 hours. So we do collect data for, say, uh, peak hour, maybe 9 to 11, 9:30 to 11:30, something like that. But if you see, collect data for peak cars, you will get more, I mean, quite a good share of cars, two-wheelers, and all so on. And you may find very less share of cyclists, less share of the people who are maybe walking also. Now, if you are really trying to build something for cycles, your peak car cannot be same for what we are thinking of. Usually, as of now, the cycle is being used by the low income group. They are going to some work and their working hours used to be much longer than us. So if you at any particular location, the same location, if you want to really catch the number of bicycles moving on that road, your peak hours should be preponed. Just try to collect data from, say, morning 7 to 8, 8:30. You will see lots of cycles. So if you want to provide facility to whatever mode, you should know what is their peak hour and collect data for that particular period. Otherwise, we may end up like saying, okay, peak hour mein data collect kar liya and we don't have bicycle share here. So we don't need it a cycle track here. But if someone is really want to provide, just prepone it and see. In Delhi, one of the posh area, we conducted some survey to understand that, how to provide cycle lane here. So we did a kind of household interview there. We asked people that, would you like to have a cycle track here? Almost everyone said, no, we don't need it because we don't use it cycle. We have cars. It's a posh area, so everyone was having more than one car even. And then they said, if you have something additional, some additional space, kindly provide us for parking, because we are having fights every day for, fighting for the car parking area. Then we conducted a survey from early morning 4 to 8, and almost for every that posh bungalow in that posh area, every bungalow was visited by more than 8 persons who came by cycle or something, their car driver, their maids, their flower supplier, newspaper suppliers, milk suppliers, and all. So many people, they were coming there to deliver their services to these area. So it is important data, what data to be collected and when to be collected. At the same time, when you need to say calculate the level of service, how good it is. Apart from the vehicles, you need to understand, is it one particular facility, is it maybe one road is with a level of service A for the vehicles, but at the same time there is no footpath. So the level of service of pedestrian is almost like the lowest category of F. Apart from just the footpath or the level of service, there are other methods called walkability index that you can use it for to understand or to estimate how good the walking facility is in particular area. Walkability index is very well known. Walkscore.com is the very well known. Apart from CRRI also has developed one method. Just I'm making a kind of giving an idea what kind of methods you should choose. Basically, if you choose wrong method, again you will end up saying that we don't need those things. So I will little bit talk about the CRRI method. It includes how many obstruction do you have. If a person is walking on footpath, how to evaluate how good or bad the footpath is. Is in a simpler terms, it is basically if you are walking on any particular footpath, say for 1 kilometer, how many times you have to come down a footpath. Even say you have decided you will keep walking on footpath, how many times you have to come down because of any kind of obstructions. It can be parked car, it can be say manhole there, it can be some trees there, some plantation by the community, I mean the household owners there. So based on these kind of obstructions we have, few of them are easy to remove, few of them are very difficult to remove. We have given some weightage so that for one particular kilometer of stretch of the footpath or even the roads which are not having footpath, we have some other method. You can calculate how good or bad the walking facility is there. This is what we did for some part of Delhi. This is just few results so that we can suggest that what kind of obstructions can be removed and how much improvement can be expected. This is what we do for vehicles, but somehow we have missed doing these all things for the sustainable routes. Yeah. In India, we do have many roads where we don't have a footpath, but still so many people are walking. If you look at the typical methods, we don't have any method to evaluate or to understand the level of service for the pedestrians who are walking on road in absence of footpath. We don't have it. So there is a one method we have developed. It basically takes care of both. Suppose there is a road and which is say having footpath, not so good, not so bad, typically what we have on our roads. Few people will still walk on footpath and few people will walk on road. Now, if we check the level of service for pedestrian, it is usually basically area available for a pedestrians to walk. And when we have a footpath on road, what we do, whoever is walking on footpath, we just calculate the level of service for those people and ignore who is walking on road. So this is the method where we can consider them also, that if out of say 100% people, 30% are walking on road, even though footpath is available, then definitely the level of service is not so good. So this is the method. I'm not going too much into the equations, but I'm just conveying the kind of concept behind these methods so that if whoever is interested or whoever is still teaching it further to the students, they should know which method to be conveyed so that uh, everyone start or puts better efforts for planning for the sustainable modes. Otherwise, it's been, I will say, high time that people have kept building the space additional infrastructure. Wherever we have congestion, we do easily suggest the flyovers. We do easily suggest the underpasses. So let's have a look at it, that how it is reflecting. In Delhi also, in last 2 decades, more than 50 flyovers were added. And what is the result today? Even congestion is more. It's not reduced definitely, but it is increased rather. So we need to know that since whatever kind of mistakes we kept doing since couple of decades, or since even the evolution of the motorized vehicles, we kept giving more and more space. And when we keep giving more and more space, basically we are inviting cars. Please come, and we have enough space for cars, so you can use it. Like in Gujarat, if I talk Gandhinagar, it has a wide road. Why would you not drive your car at the speed of 80? If there is a road which is a wide road and very less traffic, and if you put a signboard that drive at 40, I think most of them would be violators, because the design itself allows you to drive 80 or even sometimes 100 and 120. If you really want to reduce the speed, make a narrow road. Until you have enough traffic, make it narrow. You provide all traffic calming measures so that no one should be able to drive at more than 40 kilometers per hour speed. Otherwise, the wide open roads is basically inviting you to drive fast, make some unsafe behavior. You all must be very aware, like whatever kind of accidents do happen on these kind of roads. Okay. Now, with respect to road crossing, though we have discussed that what is preferable for a pedestrians to have is a signalized intersection, but if you go by IRC guidelines, it includes, if you just read the green part, what is the delay? Whenever we talk about delay, what comes to our mind is basically the delay to vehicles. Instead of delay to vehicles, we have to calculate the delay for both. The basically delay to a road user, delay to all road user, irrespective of if they are in car or they are walking or something. I will just explain this chart. Okay, suppose there is a road and there are, say, some people in car, they are going through that, and there are another set of people who are basically crossing the road. On particular road, if there are too many cars and say just 2 or 3 pedestrians keep crossing once in a while, maybe three to five pedestrians in an hour, and there are too many cars, I suggest you can have a foot overbridge, because only 3 people have to take all this extra effort for crossing the road, right? But in case there are road where some vehicles, cars are moving, and at the same time too many pedestrians have to cross the road, in whatever reason, it can be institutional area, it can be a market area or something where too many pedestrians have to cross there. Usually we provide foot over there too, so that both get separated and it reduces the traffic jam. But we suggest you should provide a signalized intersection there. Why? Because if you provide a foot over bridge there, so many people have to cross the road by putting so much extra effort. Compared to that, provide the facility to this maximum number of people by having a signalized intersection. Let car wait for some more time, additional time, delay. Just 1 minute. If by chance, if you find it, I'm going very fast, let me know, because I'm keeping track on the time as well. Now, usually what we do, being in a student, also what we have done is, whenever we calculate the level of service, we do use HCM, the Highway Capacity Manual. Sometimes we do use IRC code, Indian Road Congress codes. Now just imagine using one particular method is all right, but unknowingly what we do is, many of time, for say for vehicle level of service for vehicles, we have used the Highway Capacity Manual in the blue table. If just imagine if some delays of 36 seconds, 36-second delays falls in the category of D. This is for vehicles, say car. So if person in a car he has to wait for 36 seconds, the level of service for him is the D. Now look at the yellow table. This is for pedestrians, but this is for some other guideline. It's for IRC. Now IRC says this values. Now if a pedestrian has to wait for the same amount of time, that is 36 seconds, it will fall down in the category C, level of service C. Now can you imagine that wait time for both is same, so 36 seconds. So if someone is waiting in a car for 36 seconds, is considered to be the level of service D, and another person who's waiting for the same period, 36 seconds, but he's a walker, he's a pedestrian, and he has to stand by and he has to walk outside in the open area, and his level of service is C. So he is considered to be in a better position compared to the person who's sitting inside a car, maybe with AC. So sometimes unknowingly we use those methods and compare the values. So we need to understand if we are using any method, is it really making some sense or not? So that's what I'm just trying to say. There are many methods. Whatever method you choose for all kind of teaching or all kind of even implementation projects, do make sure that it should be in a favor of sustainable transport, or at least it should not take it otherwise. It should not give any priority to the cars. This is just table for like how, depending on how much traffic you have and how many number of pedestrians do you have, what kind of crossing facilities should be given. This is again based on the same concept we kept discussing. Now, if I talk a little bit about the road safety in India, since traffic engineering has a lot to do with the safety aspect, we need to understand what we would like to provide. Just try to understand. At many places, many forums, we kept, many agencies keep sharing that, and they feel proud about that we are building 20 kilometers per day. We are building 20 kilometers of roads in a day, and that's the progress. Yes, of course, that is a progress, but I will say it is from the managers, it's only from the management's perspective. But if we talk about the traffic engineering and transportation planning, what we are worried about, the increasing accidents. With the increased, if we see the road length has been increased by nearly 40%. But when we are increasing the road length, basically we are providing more space. The kind of number of cars or number of motor vehicles has increased more than 150%. So are we really going in the right direction or not? We must check it. Our national highways are only very few in terms of in comparison of the total road network, that is hardly 2%. But most of the accidents are happening. 1/3 of the accidents are happening on national highways. So we need to think that what is wrong with our national highways, which is creating these many accidents. I will say if we all do travel even by road also. We all know whenever you are traveling from interstates or intercities, our highways are not truly highways considered in the developed countries. Why? Because when we move from say Surat to Ahmedabad, you will have so many small villages on the way, so many habitations on the way. So our highways are not truly highways. They are just connecting roads. And when I say connecting roads, it's not access control. There are so many people on both the sides of these roads. So we need to understand beyond some point, we cannot increase the speed, especially while approaching towards these habitations. Now, whenever we see, even in a research purpose or everyone is involved in that with respect to FIRs, the report being posted by a police person for a particular accident, I will say you might have seen these kind of statistics. It is basically conveys that most of the time it's a fault of driver. I will say don't believe it, because this is the easiest reason to say for a person that it was a fault of driver. But if you pick up, if you with the help of student or help of your team, if you pick up any few FIRs for one particular location, just try to see what is the engineering errors, because I always believe there is most of the time it's an engineering error which is making some accidents. It's not even just understanding, it's being proved by many studies also. So because if there is some accident happening, first aspect is to be checked the engineering part, and then comes the education. And when we say education, this is part of education. Education also involves the drivers and other people. But unless we are correct with our engineering part, I don't think we should be teaching a lot to drivers. At the same time, the last point comes the enforcement. We do believe in the engineering, the education and enforcement. So being an engineer, it's our duty that first the all engineering part should be very correct. If that is correct, then comes the role of education. We need to teach all drivers how to drive, where to drive, where not to drive, and so on. And the last, very few percent comes for the enforcement. If some violators are doing something, it is to be, they needs to be punished. But somehow we are doing totally in the uh, reverse sequence. We are highly dependent on enforcement. Whatever is being done by police is enforcement. Without correcting engineering, we should not go directly for the enforcement. So if there are some major enforcement, we should not be proud of. We need to relook at the engineering part wherever these locations are. Okay, I will. I think this is a statistics which basically conveys the younger people are dying. So we need to be very careful. Why I show this is to make you aware that whoever is dying in at present scenario due to road accidents, even now we call it crashes, not even accident, are the younger people. So it is the major worry, not only for India, even for WHO, because the major focus is on to improving the road safety for the children or the younger people. Okay. So I will talk a little bit about the recent work we are involved in. This is about the road safety for children. As of now, being a member of IRC, we are writing one manual for this road safety for children. It includes uh, mm, some directions, some guidelines for all four stakeholders. And when I say all four, is basically uh, whoever is whoever is responsible for constructing roads and traffic management, the school, the parent, and the child. So all whatever messages to be conveyed to these four stakeholders, that's what we are writing in this particular document. But for this particular presentation, I will say this in this document, what we are saying is the school zone. What is a school zone? In any city, whenever there is a school, around school we have seen, especially in the school opening and closing times, we have seen so many pedestrians walking around. We do see some children moving without, to be honest, a very responsible way, and obviously because they are children. Apart from that, many of in most of the cases, the guardian who, if comes to pick and drop to the child, they are either elderly people, or the most of the time they are mothers and elderly people. They come by walk, they come by even rickshaw, auto rickshaw, cycle rickshaw, and so on. So what I'm trying to convey is, around school, especially in the opening and closing area, the traffic becomes quite different. It becomes quite unsafe because so many people are moving here and there, including children, which are definitely not responsible for any kind of accidents. So as a driver, if I'm approaching area towards school, I should be informed that I have to be very cautious. So what has been suggested in this new document is, as a driver who has to pass through those roads where the school is about there, the whole area should look like something different. We call it a school zone, but it should be basically, ideally, it is to be something different. Like as of now, we know if there are so many buses, if a yellow bus is there, we do know that this is a school bus. So we may have to be little extra careful for this particular bus, because children could be there and they may behave unexpectedly, randomly. So exactly in the similar manner, what we are suggesting is the school zone should be highlighted maybe as a yellow carpet. When I say yellow carpet, I don't literally mean it, but basically so many yellow colors to be kept in this zone in form of a zebra crossing, in form of signages, and so many other conveying messages for pickup drop off zone, the speed limitation and everything, so that whoever is approaching towards this area, the driver, he must be very careful. So that's what we have included in this document. We have suggested like what a road and traffic agency should do within this school zone. Of course, they are responsible for the whole city safety, I mean road safety for the whole city, but with respect to school zone, what is expected to be done. So a very detailed guideline for them. I am sure it will be published very soon, so it can be useful for even children. Now, of course, how to define the school zone, it all depends on is that school is on arterial road or sub-arterial road or collector road or a local street. Depending on that, we need to understand that how much area around the school, we need to define a radius. For this particular radius, the school zone is defined for that particular location. So this is some more detailed guidelines on that, how to define. Apart from this, once a school zone is defined, we consider it a transition stretch. Basically, someone is suppose there is expressway. Unfortunately, we have schools on highways also and even expressways also. So if someone is moving on a highway, some transition stretch is to be given to the driver so that he can slow down. Obviously, wherever we have to make an area safer, we need to make everyone slow down. So this transition stretch will be there for some length, deceleration length, and so that they have enough time and the length of road to slow down instead of making a very sudden change. And obviously the principle is basically we have to reduce the conflict points between children and all the road users, and we need to separate them out, and we definitely have to manage the speed differences. In a school area, we are we are keeping a child as the least responsible or not at all responsible, because if something goes wrong around a school where children are moving here and there, we should never think that we should teach everything to a child, that how to move, how to cross the road. Because if say children of say even 5 6 7 years, you may see a child is moving very calmly with your, even if he or she is holding your hand, and all of a sudden something very interesting comes up, like say a kite or balloon. He may leave the holded hand, and he or she may run. And this is a child behavior. Accepting this child behavior, we should design our roads so that even if he makes or a child makes a so-called error. I mean, being a child, it's not an error, but for us, it may consider so basically unsafe behavior. There should be all others should be able to reduce the speed and make him safe. I don't mean that we should say children to move anywhere, wherever you want, but in case they do, instead of blaming them, we need to make a kind of a supportive infrastructure in form of everything. This is just, I think, example. These kind of examples we are adding into this document. How you can highlight this school zone. It should be colorful, so that obviously colorful somehow conveys a message that it is something for children. Also, it depends where the school location is. It is, I mean, the gates of these orientation of school is such a way that gates open on the major roads on both side or one side. This is just one example. We have included all kind of things. And last, few interesting drawings to convey the message to children. But this is the last part, and we are not at all reliable. I mean, not at all dependent on these things, because though we are conveying some messages to children, but we are, while designing a road, we are expecting they will do mistake or they will go other way. So this is, I mean, I always say, if a child is dying due to road crash, it's a failure of all what we are doing in form of engineering, in form of education, or even enforcement. So being in this profession, if we are anywhere we are involved in the safety, I mean traffic safety part of children, or even being in institute, younger stuff, younger children, even the maybe be taken as students, we need to make sure that they are safe, because this is the kind of age where the unsafe behavior may happen. This is just last slide, I will say. This is what we did. We developed some kind of a small traffic plans, traffic parks, to just to teach what is right and wrong. But we are definitely not much into teaching into children. I think I will stop here. Time is this much. So next part I have, but I think I will leave it. I will stop it here. With respect to just a closing marks is we need to know our priority. If our priority is NMT or the sustainable modes, definitely we have enough space. And in which particular area, who's on priority? If it's a highway, the priority is trucks and cars. Definitely area around school, the priority is children. So even our designs must reflect who's on priority. So that's what I would like to say. I think Professor Mehta, I will stop here.
Still we have 15 minutes. If you want to continue, then you can.
Okay, okay. I hope all are awake. So I quickly go through a small project we had recently. Okay, just one second. In Delhi, actually, we have metro and metro stations. Now, around every metro stations, we are facing congestion. Almost every, apart from a very, which are almost towards outskirts of the city. We are having congestion everywhere. And whenever we have a congestion, even implementing agencies approached us to say, "Ki kindly give some solution." Then we asked them, what kind of solutions are you looking for? Then they said basically traffic jam नहीं होना चाहिए, कुछ flyover बना दो, कुछ underpass बना दो. Now we told them that we will not go for flyover. Why? Or we will not go for underpass. We all might have seen in our cities. Suppose there is an particular road where you might have seen in your past, say 10, 12, 15 years that some locations are there where heavy congestion was there, signalized intersection. And then all of a sudden, I mean, not all of a sudden, but then the authority decides to construct a flyover so that it becomes congestionless. Now, at the same location, if you are in the same city, same you have visited the same place for longer than some few years, now you may observe that because a new flyover has been constructed, traffic becomes easy. After this flyover has been constructed and after these, traffic becomes easy, but again after 3, 4, 5 years, this flyover itself becomes a congestion point. Over the flyover also, you may see a traffic jam. In Delhi, there are many flyovers where, again, over the flyovers, it is a complete traffic jam, and again, the police person has to control it. So what we did by providing a flyover, we just shifted the problem for a couple of more years. Congestion पहले से ही था, flyover के आने से कुछ time के लिए कम हुआ. Again, it comes back. And when it comes back, you have traffic jam at grade as well as on flyover as well. So we have not solved the problem, just we shifted the problem by a couple of years. So in this particular project, we said we will not give this kind of a temporary solutions. We will give you, we will not go for any additional space as we started with this presentation. We are not going to add any space because whenever we space add, basically it attracts the more and more cars, and after a couple of years the situation becomes again the same. So in this particular uh, project, we identified 5 major metro stations where the heavy traffic jam is going on. And with this constraint that we will not add any additional space, what can be done? So we obviously, with typically what we do collect all kind of data, traffic data, and we ask the users what would you like to do and all. These are the 5 metro station, and just I mean, no need to go in more detail in terms of a location or the name of metro station. Just try to see the kind of traffic they have at this particular location, nearly more than around 1 lakh vehicles. And of course, I will show you the number of pedestrians as well. More than 60,000 pedestrians are also there in a day at one particular place. Now, if you look at these charts, basically it shows how the traffic is less or more over the period of time throughout the day. There isn't anything like a peak, clear peak. It's a totally almost throughout the day, wherever you go in Delhi, irrespective of morning or evening, you will face the traffic jam. So this is just Parisian data. I will quickly go. I mean, this is just model split, what and how many kind of two-wheelers we have and three-wheelers we have and so on. Now, interesting part is because this is a metro station, whoever is coming to metro station, they are coming by some mode. Now we have observed that 40% are coming by walk, 35% are coming by all kind of rickshaws, shared rickshaw, cycle rickshaw, auto rickshaw, and so on. 14% are coming by car. This car can be a private car, someone is dropping their spouse or children or anyone, and some are coming by the app-based taxi like Uber and Ola. And 8% are coming by bus and remaining 4% by two-wheeler. Now just main thing is majority, more than 70% are coming by two modes, walk and rickshaw. But we have ignored them. We have not given any facilities to them. If we don't take care of these two major modes, again, as we discussed in the initial slides, they will try to think that as soon as I earn some money, I will buy a car and I will move by that, because we are not having any facilities for them. But at the same metro stations, around metro stations, we provide a car parking. When we provide a car parking, it's basically benefiting to someone, but that proportionately, it's quite less. Even out of this 40% who are coming to metro station by car or taxi, half of them are coming by Uber and Ola, or basically taxis. Only 7% are parking their car and using metro. But for them, we have a huge car parking area. Now, cannot we think of removing or reducing the car parking so that we have a better facility, the circulation plans for this rickshaw and walkers, who are majority, but they need quite a less space. So that's what we focused on. And whenever we say that we need to provide the facilities for walking and cycle rickshaw, most of the implementing agency will say we don't have enough space. Abhi already jam hai, ab inko kahan footpath denge. So what we did, we looked at every stretch of a road very carefully. This is definitely a wide road. Now, can you think that this is a so wide road? Is there any reason of having a congestion here? अगर इतने wide road में भी congestion है, तो we can't double it. We can't keep adding the space. So we just redesign the complete space, everything, every space, every inch of the space, so that we can accommodate almost everyone. And that's what we did. I will show you a few more places, few more spaces which we have looked at. Like this is the space. It's just underneath this footover bridge and the pillar of metro station. This is totally unorganized. We totally redesigned that and we kept it a cycle rickshaw parking, and that too in the circular movement, so that even as soon as the metro user comes out, he would be able to have access to this rickshaw and they can immediately move on. Otherwise, these rickshaws are standing on the main road. It's creating congestion, one thing, and whoever is coming out from metro user, they also feel unsafe. So if we look into detail, look at the space very carefully, we need to know that what can be removed and what can be improved. Only 3 cars parked here every day, and this is another location. Only 3 to 4 cars have been parked here every day. It belongs to some important people, I understand. But by removing these 4, we could accommodate 20 cycle rickshaw people here. And that is definitely a huge benefit for all who are coming to use metro. So what we did is, for every location, we just look at what is the space and is it getting utilized for right person or not. When I say right person, again, I will go for a sustainable modes. So we have cleared, now there is enough space to have organized or very safe path for almost all sustainable users, and at the same time we have reduced the congestion at all these area around metro stations. And this was just part of it. We asked all users also that what they would like to have. This was before giving solution. everyone, most of them, they say that they need to have a clear path. They would like to have a red signal, I mean the clear green for them, so that they can cross the road. Otherwise, we most of the time we design the signal cycle according to the traffic. And when I say traffic, unfortunately, we mean only motorized traffic. We ignore the kind of green time required for a pedestrian. If someone has to cross the road, we should know that at what speed usually a pedestrian walk comfortably without, running it. So that depending on the width of the road, we need to design how much green is to be given for a pedestrians to cross the road. But unfortunately, all our even designs are based on the, for the vehicles. So almost for all these, each and every small details we looked at and we provide solution. And we were very happy because we could balance this. Otherwise, all the burden of car was on the shoulder of pedestrians. So we could give better facilities to pedestrians. At the same time, we have improved the capacity of roads by just making a minor corrections, almost so many. I mean, there were too many minor corrections, but all were minor. Without adding a space, we just redesigned the space and we could achieve a significant improvement. And that's what we should be, I mean, that should be done at the very first point. Otherwise, if we start adding the space, basically we are postponing the problem. We are just shifting the problems for a couple of years, or maybe sometimes in terms of space. But the problem will come back and we need to again resolve it. Apart from that, it brings the problem, new problems like definitely pollution. Delhi is having the major problem of pollution. But if we follow the same trend what Delhi did in terms of adding the space, I think almost every city will reach to that extent. So better we rethink again what is to be done, what is to be given the priority. I think I will stop here.